Alright, so today's episode of Film Friday is going to be a little bit different. We're going to go out and we're going to show you how to shoot film photography. Right, so this is episode 3 of Film Fridays. So far we've talked about how to find a camera, we've talked about how to load a camera, and today we're going to be talking about how to shoot film in your film camera and some tips and tricks in probably the worst and most advanced conditions to shoot film ever: snow. So something I definitely recommend with shooting film is try to always bring your digital camera with you if you have one. This is a great way to test exposures, figure out the settings that you want to use if you're not fully comfortable shooting this yet. We've got our camera loaded with film, we've got our lens attached, and now we're going to try and start shooting some photography. Now I've got a really long lens on this, and we're going to go over a couple of things you want to keep in mind. So with this very large, wide, open scene, I'm going to start focusing on like the details around here. We are shooting black and white, so we don't have to worry about the color so much, but we do want to think about the contrast of things, the shadows that the light is casting, and things like that. And I'm also looking for any animals out here that I might be able to see. I've already seen a couple squirrels. On any manual camera that you're going to get, you're going to have to worry about 3 different things. The first being the ISO. This is something we set and we leave it alone. So I'm going to be shooting everything today at 400 ISO. That is a 400 speed film in my camera. It's box speed, so we have it set to 400. The next thing that you're going to worry about is your aperture. This is the size of the closure of your aperture inside the lens. So this is a smaller aperture and this is a larger aperture. Kind of counterintuitive, but this is going to be the most wide open and this is going to be the most closed down. The last thing is going to be our shutter speed. So as you can see, it is a very bright, even though it's overcast, it's a pretty bright day. So I'm going to be able to shoot at shutter speeds above 60 for the most part of the day, even up to 32 on my aperture, which is the smallest aperture. Now, if you're new to photography, then we're going to go over shutter speeds and aperture just really briefly. There's other guides to this. This is a basic photography thing that goes across more than just film photography. But for the most part, a faster shutter speed is going to stop motion better, whereas a slower shutter speed is going to blur motion. So if I were to move like this, you see the background blurs behind me, but I stay in focus. If I had a faster shutter speed on this, the background would be more in focus. So, and then for aperture, that's going to affect your depth of field. So that depth of field is usually what people refer to as the bokeh. That is the blurriness you kind of see around the edges, the out of focus parts of an image. A larger opening aperture is going to create more of that blurring effect, and a smaller opening aperture will create less of that. More of it will be in focus. So let's go find us a shot that I want to do, and I'll show you how we're composing it. Alright, so we're going to take a picture of this, and what we're going to basically be doing is I'm going to do 2 shots, one with a wider open aperture, one with a more stop down aperture. Now the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to get a good blurry photo, and I also want to get one that's kind of in focus and just compare the two. In general, the thing that I would tend to do walking around in this area if I'm looking for animals is going to be shooting at like an f8 and try to keep my shutter at a 1/125th of a second. Even shooting at 32 on the aperture, which is a really tiny opening, I was able to shoot at 1/60th of a second. So that's how much light there is right now for 400 ISO film. Alright, so far we've talked about shutter speeds and apertures and just getting them basically set up the way you want for the scene you want. Now we're going to talk about a couple tips and tricks. If you have a fully manual camera like this, meaning you don't have autofocus, which unless you were able to find a really nice film camera, that's probably what you're going to have to deal with, is a manual focus. When you're starting off, I'm going to recommend that you shoot at a smaller diameter aperture. So f5.6, f8, f11 if possible. These are going to help you fix any misfocus issues, being out of focus slightly, so that you don't have to deal with that as badly. Even if your lens goes down to 1.2 or 2, shooting at a higher aperture f-stop number is going to help you with focusing. Last thing we're going to talk about is less of a film photography thing and just a general thing. So I'm going to start setting up some stage scenes with some of the props that I brought to do some nice fun photos with. And yeah, that's the biggest thing, is set up things that you are interested in. Take photos of the same things you would take if you had a digital camera. And yeah, have fun with it. So, for example, this scene, I'm going to be shooting more shallow depth of field, so more wide open aperture to get the blurriness, but still try to get all this stuff in shape, but get the background blurred out. The final tip that I want to give you guys in this episode, I know this has been a long, all over the place episode, kind of different, but unlike shooting digital where you kind of want to underexpose, with film you want to overexpose, because remember, you're taking pictures onto a negative that you're going to have to inverse later. So if you overexpose on film, it'll come out underexposed when you do invert it. There's a lot of people in the digital world that will just always underexpose. With film, you don't want to always overexpose. You want to try and get the perfect exposure whenever possible. But if it's not getting to that point where you want it, like if you do one click on the aperture and it goes too dark and it's just slightly overexposed, then I shoot that way. But for the most part, always shoot perfect exposure. And if you have to, overexpose just a little bit. Well, luckily I got a little bit of sun coming out, so I do have some shadows to play with. So we're going to play with this for a little while and try to fill this role. All right, so that was a very different type of Film Friday episode. We're back now in my home, in my studio, and yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment down below if you have any questions. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, something you want to know about film photography specifically, let me know. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. This is going to be a definitely different one because I shot it all on my phone and edited it all on my phone, unlike normal. And yeah, just wanted to try something different and get out there. So we'll see you guys in the next one.